Hello and welcome to What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. I'm your host, Steven Reid. On this show, we obviously do lots and lots of album reviews, and today I am here to talk about the unreleased remastered demos from Giuffria, which I would suggest a lot of people would unofficially know as Gfria 3. So I'm going to do a little bit of history here because I think there's quite a lot to cover. Okay, hopefully I won't confuse you. I probably will because I'm confused myself. Okay, so a bit of history. Giuffria released a self-titled debut album in 1984. This was quite a big hit. It had a big hit on it called To the Heart, which charted really well in the singles chart in the US. And at that point, the band was Greg Giuffria on keyboards, David Glenn Isley on vocals, Craig Goldie on guitars, Alan Krieger on drums, and Chuck Wright on bass. Now, Craig Goldie left to join Dio at that point, and Chuck Wright, who'd had an on off relationship with Quiet Riot right from their inception, went back to them at that stage. So Giuffria continued on and they released Silk and Steel in 1986. And by that time, they had Lanny Cordola on guitars and they had David Sykes on bass. Now, this second album kind of sank without a trace, really, compared to the debut. I don't like it as much. I don't think it's as good an album. And the band themselves have never really been hugely fond of it. Producer Pat Glasser was, shall we say, introduced into the project by the record label, and the band weren't very pleased with that. Greg produced the debut. The debut sounds fantastic, and he's gone on record questioning really what Pat did for this project, shall we say. So didn't end up the way they wanted it to, and relationships with the label began to kind of suffer, I think, because of the whole process. So Giuffria began to unravel at this stage, but there's always been talk, and there's always been evidence, to be fair, that there was songs worked on for what has become unofficially known as Giuffria 3. Now, at this point, obviously Greg had been in Angel many, many moons ago, and they were on Casablanca, so therefore he kind of knew Gene Simmons from Kiss quite well, and Gene was setting up his Simmons Records label at this juncture, and he suggested to Greg that he would sign his band. Now, the story goes, how true this is or not, because there's lots of different versions out there, that he suggested he would sign the band if the band changed their name and changed their singer. So Giuffria became House of Lords, and James Christian came in on vocals in place of David Glenn Isley. Now, I'll admit that from there, the timeline gets a little bit fuzzy, okay? And this doesn't really help, okay? So inside you have a little bit of liner notes here, which basically says Giuffria were a band, and it only names Greg and David Glenn Isley down here somewhere. And it basically says Greg's a guy. And that's it. You get a really cool shot of Greg on keyboards on the back, and what a great keyboard player he was and remains. And I really like the cover. The cover's cool. It's through F&A Records. I was really quite unaware of until now, to be fair. But I went on their website the other day. They seem to do lots of these kind of nearly were but weren't quite releases. They've got like the recordings from Lillian Axe when they were still called Stiff, which were never officially released, and various things like that. I'll probably go back to their website to have another look to see what they've got in all fairness. So yeah, 10 tracks on this, okay? 8 of them arrived 25 years ago through Frontiers on the Lost tapes, okay, from, funnily enough, David Glenn Isley. Now, this too is a strange little release because it has got 9 tracks from these sessions on it. So the song Shot Down in Love, which are from these sessions, it would appear, is on this, but not on that. All very confused. And slap bang in the middle of the Lost tapes are, I think, 4 songs by the band Dirty White Boy that David went on to be in when he moved on from Giuffria. So this is excellent, but a little bit unsatisfying because this track sequencing is all wrong. But there you go. So between the two, we've got 11 songs from these sessions, only 10 on this. So yeah, all a little bit confusing, as is even kind of working out who plays on these. Okay, because there's no credits, there's no writing credits, there's no playing credits, there's nothing. Now there is on this. Okay, so you know who wrote all of the songs, but certainly the ones from this session. And David put in the little bit in yellow on here. There's a sentence, realistically, or two, that tells you roughly where they were recorded, who was on the session or not. So between the two, it's a little bit dissatisfying. And I do appreciate we're going back a long time into history here, kind of 30 years ago, not quite, but in around there, 25, 30 years ago. So memories might be a little bit hazy, but it would be nice to know who we're actually listening to. So from piecing things together, what I think I've worked out is that on most of these, or some of these, I think you've got Greg Giuffria playing keyboards on all these songs. You've got David Glen Isley singing on all these songs. And I do know that when Greg and David got together to write the songs, because they basically were the main songwriters for Gfria, that David would play drums. So he may play drums on a track or two here, or he may not. Hard to tell. Lanny Cordola is certainly credited in David's album on playing guitars on some of these. David actually even mentions that this is just after Lanny joined the band, which doesn't place it in the right timeline for coming after Silk and Steel. It's all very confused. I'm really not very sure. Chuck Wright is definitely back on bass for some of this, and Ken Mary, ex of Alice Cooper, great drummer, is on drums here because Giuffria, Cordola, Wright, Mary, and James Christian would go on to become House of Lords. Okay, so the timeline is here, there, or somewhere. It's quite difficult to tell. So realistically, this is remastered versions of what we got here, but this sounds really good too. This is a little better, to be fair. Greg's done an excellent job, and there are lots of comments around the internet that realistically, these don't sound like demos. And when you consider that we were probably recorded 86, 87, 88, they really don't sound like demos. They sound pretty much like Gfria's albums. It has to be said, certainly like the debut anyway. What I would say is that on the new version, it's a little punchier, and you can tell that there's a little bit more modern technology used in improving the sound. Doesn't sound like an album from 2025, and it shouldn't, because it's not. Interestingly, considering that it is the keyboard player who has remastered these, I'd actually suggest it's the guitars that benefit most from the work that Greg has done. They are a little bit more to the forefront. The solos kind of sing a little bit more. And just in general, it feels much more like the kind of keyboard guitar battle that House of Lords would become and really thrive through than the slightly more keyboard-led sound that Gfria were, even on both the albums that they put together. So, as I say, 3 of the songs from these sessions would go on to be on the House of Lords album. From a completely nerdy point of view, I know that David Glen Isley co-wrote 4 songs on the album, so I really would like to hear the version of Under Blue Skies with him singing it. That would appear to be on none of these albums. It has to exist, I would guess. So, musically, unsurprisingly, these albums all kind of cross those lines between what Gfria were doing, so that kind of keyboard-led AOR sound with big choruses, and the maybe more kind of American pop rock sound, maybe more forceful than that. They were a kind of big, proud, strutting sort of sound, a really great, hard, melodic rock band that House of Lords would go on to become. So the 3 songs that made that album are Slip of the Tongue, Pleasure Palace, and Jealous Heart. So they're on this officially with James Christian singing, and you get them on here with David Glen Isley singing them. And those 2 singers, interestingly, to me anyway, really don't sound that much different. There's a lot of similarities between the way they phrase things and the way that they sing things. I would suggest that David is more blues-based, hard rock blues-based in his attack, more throaty, but still very clear, and it's still a great singer, an excellent singer. James Christian maybe has more power about him, and he's maybe, I don't know, just a little bit more forceful in the attack. So listening to those and comparing the 2, the backing tracks were really pretty much bang on. There's some of Ken Mary's drumming on those songs. It's just outstandingly good. But I really like having both versions with both singers, and it is interesting to compare and contrast, but also to hear how little they then rework the demos. These demos feel really much like these songs are done. Let's go lay them down now. And that would appear to be what they did. So for me, although, as I say, all of this, and has been for quite some time, has been available online through sites that do that kind of thing, even just on YouTube, to be fair, Giuffria 3 is a thing there. But there are two songs on here that don't officially appear on any CD released before, and those are Fool's Paradise and Reach Out. And they just fit perfectly, as you would expect, into that sound. They work perfectly on the album. I've got 25 years with the stuff that's been on here over the two songs that are on here. So it's a little unfair to suggest that they maybe don't quite come up to that same standard. That's probably more a me thing. Maybe in 10 years' time, it'll all just sound, as good as the rest, realistically. But there's stuff on here. Don't Turn Away, Golden Town, Stand Up, and especially Are You Ready, which closes the album out, that are as good, if not better, than what Gfria did, and maybe even the House of Lords debut, which is, I'm going to say probably, but it isn't probably. It's my favourite album out of all of the kind of things that I've touched on. So what's lacking is detail, and detail would be lovely. I think when you buy an archival release, you're at least looking to know who played on the songs. You're at least looking for a little bit of context about how they came together, who wrote them, who played on them, all that kind of stuff. And that would just be the icing on the cake for me. If those things were there, this would be a 4 out of 5 album, or maybe 4.25. They are demos. It isn't quite finished album quality. It's really not far away. It's not an issue for me, but you have to be aware that you are listening to unreleased remastered demos, as the name tells you, and not a fully officially finished album. It kind of is really, though. I'm going to give it 3.75 out of 5 because I want the whole package. If you're going to give me this, give me the detail too, please. That would be fabulous. But better to have it than not. And if you've got any interest in Giuffria, House of Lords, Angel, those kind of bands, or just that scene in general around this time, this is a fascinating little release that just finally kind of puts a cap on it more than anything else, because these are kind of long lost, as David Glenn Isley's release suggests. That wasn't meant to be a pun there, but there you go. And it is a welcome addition to all of that. It kind of wraps it all up nicely. And even more excitingly, Greg supposedly has new music on the way. He's kind of got a band project. He's kind of got some soundtrack stuff in the works and various things like that. So hopefully we are going to see more from Greg Giuffria going forward. And I can only thank him for finally giving us this properly, because it is very well received here. I am more than happy to have it. So there you go. That is it. That is Gfria, the unreleased remastered demos. Thanks for joining me. As always, keep up with what's on the channel. There is so much happening on the channel across all the different shows. Homework assignment has also just reappeared, which is always great fun to see who gives who what and who likes what and who doesn't sometimes. So yeah, we're on the web. We are here on Sea of Tranquility. We're on the web. We're YouTube. What do we do? Instagram. I don't do any of these things, but there you go. Pete does them all, and he's there all the damn time. But more importantly, he's giving you fantastic content on the channel every day of the week. He's making sure there's something for you to listen to learn, to get involved with, to be part of. And that really is what we're all about. So thanks for watching. I'm Steven Reid, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.